Forgiveness it's when you muster up genuine compassion for those who have wronged you. Instead of allowing anger towards them, you give them compassion. So, I mean, we got to think about that, right? We got to think about how we view the world. We all view the world through our bodies, through our eyes, right? My name is Sylvester. I view the world through Sylvester's experience, right? I'm supposed to view the world through my own experience, right? That's the way we're conditioned. That's the way we're trained. When you interact with other human beings see the world through their lenses, right? Through their eyes. Now, what happens with this is there's always a conflict of who's right, who's wrong, who's better, who's worse, right? This is what we do. We compare our perspectives or our visions of something. And so what happens is sometimes someone may hurt your feelings and not even be completely aware of it. And they're not aware of it for a couple of reasons. One, maybe you haven't communicated it to them. Two, they're not aware from their perspective. They're not aware that they hurt you because what they did isn't harmful to them. So here's what we have to do. We have to do two things. One, we have to always understand that other people have different perspectives of the world, of how they see their own behavior, of how they analyze and interpret the way they interact with the world. So you may say something, you may make a joke that's offensive to this person, but to me it might be hilarious. Like I have a crazy sense of humor. You can almost talk about anything and I'm gonna find it funny. I'm not one of those people that gets offended. Even if, okay, you can see that I'm a black guy. Even if you talk about black people and you're not a black person, it's not going to offend me because I think a lot of those jokes are humorous. I think it's funny. But you talk to the next person, they might not think it's funny, right? And so that's something we always have to be mindful of when we're dealing with people. We have to understand that every single person operates with a different frequency, with a different consciousness, right? So step one to forgiveness is to understand, okay, this person sees the world in a certain way, and then I see the world in a certain way. And once we can accept that duality right there, then we can decrease all conflict, right? As far as forgiveness goes, we can decrease all the conflict, right? Because forgiveness is healing, right? Healing is important, right? Because pain sucks, right? So this is why I'm talking about forgiveness. So when you're able to see that this person sees the world that way and this person sees the world that way and I see the world this way, and you can accept that each person sees the world in the way that they do, then you reduce the conflict that goes on in your brain. But let me give you a real world example of something I've experienced, right? So I remember being a kid. I don't believe in child abuse. I don't believe in hitting your kids to prove a point. Why? Because I know psychology and I know communication, and you don't need, in my mind, you don't need those things to raise a human being. If I'm putting my hands on someone, I'm putting my hands on someone because I want to fuck them up, because I don't like them, because they have threatened me, because I feel as if they are trying to take my life. That is why I resort to violence personally. So when I think about my kid, which I don't have one yet, but I do want kids, but when I think about my child, I personally can't think of putting my hands on a child. Again, you gotta see that I'm black, and in my culture, in the black American culture, we actually believe it's okay to beat our children. And I'm not comparing this to anybody else's culture. I'm talking about my experience. We think it's okay to beat our children, but to me that's not okay, because to me that's the slave mindset, the slave behavior that was given to our ancestors that we have passed down. See, I, Sylvester, truly understand compassion, love, empathy, psychology, and communication, and therefore I have to go completely against the ideology that we need to beat our children to raise an adult who can respect the system, who has discipline, who has respect and love for other people. To me, that's fear and violence and anger when I think about child abuse. So I made a pact. If you read my book, There's So Love At The Pain, I made a pact with myself 4 years ago that I would never put my hand on any child, because that's not the way I want to be raised. So now I just gave you the context, so now you can understand what I'm about to tell you. This is all connected to forgiveness. Stay with me, don't go anywhere. My father he was raised in the Army, and his parents were, my grandparents, they were from Mississippi. So with my father being raised in the Army, and then he was a black belt in karate, and then parents being from Mississippi, he had a very tough way of bringing us up, right? Like, it would be Saturday morning and he would get us up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and we're kids, you know, and I'm like, dude, like, it's Saturday. kids eat cereal and watch cartoons on Saturday. Why are you waking me up, you know? And he'd be like, get up, you need to do this and do this. And like, I would accomplish more things by 9 o'clock than most adults would accomplish, right? So, okay, I'm grateful for that, but here's the part that caused me and him conflict, is he thought it was okay to hit his kids, right? That's his perspective, right? So, I'm the type of kid where I'm still the type of human now. I'm going against the grain. Like, whatever you tell me to do, I'm gonna do the opposite of. Why? Because I wanna see the consequences. I wanna see what's going to happen. If you tell me to think this way, I'm gonna think that way. If you tell me to do this, I'm gonna do that. Like, I'm going to do what I wanna do. That's just the type of person that I am. You're not going to control me. You're not going to box me into the way you think I should live my life. You can't tell me what I'm capable of. This is how I am as a person. So I was this way as a kid. So my dad, he had a lot of conflict with me because he wanted me to be in this box of how he thought a child should be. And I was completely outside the box. So whoever says there's a huge difference between beating, abusing your child, and spanking and discipline, I want you to really, really, really think about that, because a child doesn't know the difference. See, you think you know the difference because you're an adult, because I can hit you like that, and for me, I can justify that as, oh, I'm doing this for your good. But if you hit a kid like that, how does a kid know the difference? See, that's bullshit right there. Don't just say it's okay to be kids if you haven't actually sat down and thought and read the psychology on it. Just because your parents gave it to you, that doesn't make it right. Just because you do it to your kids, that doesn't make it right. Go ahead and sit down and look at the studies. Look at the studies. Look at the outcomes of the kids who, anyway, that's a whole nother topic. But let me continue. So anyways, what happened is when I was 17 years old, my dad still thought it was okay to put his hands on me. And it's not. I'm 17 years old, bro. Like, I've been working out. At this point, I've been working out since I was like 13 in the gym. So I'm looking at it like I'm almost a grown man. I'm 17. You know what I mean? I'm 17 years old. So my dad thought it was still okay to put his hands on me. And I told him, I said, look, if you touch me again, I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to seriously hurt you, because the only people who cause harm to me are people who don't like me. You can't tell me you love me as my father and I'm 17 years old and you're trying to beat my ass with an iron skillet at that. I haven't talked about this story in my books yet. With an iron skillet at that, right? So what ended up happening is he kicks me out the house because he's like, well, if you're not gonna listen, you need to go. And I was 17. So I was like, okay. And I told him, I said, I don't have a problem listening, but I do have a problem with you putting your hands on me. There's nobody in this world that has to put their hands on me. All you have to do is communicate with me. I understand that if I'm in your house, these are the certain rules. Give me the space and give me the opportunity to live inside of your rules. I don't mind living inside of your rules, but I do mind walking on eggshells because I feel like you're going to attack me. See, when you claim to love me, then you need to understand what love is. If you think it's okay to hit me, you don't understand love. If you think it's okay to treat me like shit because it's your house, you don't understand love. If you think that I'm supposed to just take any type of treatment whatsoever that you plan to give out in the name of your love, I don't want that fucking love, because that's not love. So all you people who think it's okay to beat your kids, to put your fucking husband or wife down, to curse them out, to emotionally tell them they ain't shit, that's not love. That's a fucked up version of whatever you think it is. That's not love, because love is healing. Love is understanding. Love is nourishment. Love is taking care of another person when they can't take care of themselves. Love is saying, hey, you made a mistake. Let me show you the right way. Love is saying, hey, you know what? I can't teach you the right way, so let me talk about myself and show you my errors. Let me show you my flaws. Let me show you my mistakes so you can feel comfortable, so you can heal. See, that's what I do. That's what I'm doing with you right now. I'm talking to you about my errors. See, I don't come to you and preach to you as someone who knows everything. I'm only sharing you my stories. I'm only sharing the things that I have messed up and the things that I have experienced. That's it. So, let me finish that story. This is this is water. Water in my wine glass. Hold on. Now, if you guys are just tuning in, you missed the whole back end of the story, right? So you just gotta bear with me. You gotta trust what I'm saying is on point, all right? If you're just tuning in, but if you're here with me, rock with me, okay? So here's what happens. So my dad kicks me out the house at 17. So then, I go to college. I graduated high school early. The reason I graduated high school early is because they thought I was a quote unquote genius when I was younger. And so I was in accelerated grade school. So I skipped a bunch of grades. I didn't think I was a genius. I just thought school was extremely boring because you have a 16-week program for information that takes 2 weeks to train. So I would just always read ahead. I would study ahead. I would do the homework ahead. And I would just, that's how I did grade school, so whatever. So then by the time I got to high school and I graduated, I'm 17 years old. When I started college, I was still 17. So, anyways. So me and my dad, we don't talk until maybe I was 22 or 23. I think for about 4 or 5 years. Yeah, till I pretty much got done with college. And the reason that we didn't talk is because I didn't want to talk to him. How the hell are you gonna put me out the house when I'm 17? I got no money. I have no work experience. I don't have friends who have money. All my friends are my age, so it's not like anyone can take care of me, right? My parents divorced 2 to 3 years before that. So my brother and sister don't live with me, so I don't have any very, very close people. I'm not near my mom, and all my cousins who I grew up with, they live an hour away. But you kicked me out the house, right? So to me, I'm looking at that like from a very angry filled position. I'm pissed. I'm 17. How do you put me out the house, right? And the reason you put me out the house, check this out, I didn't even mention this part of the story. The reason that my dad kicked me out the house is because he wanted me to wash the dishes, right? But the dishes were not my dishes. They were his dishes and his girlfriend's dishes. And of course, I had a little vendetta against her because I felt like she broke up my parents, which may not be true, but that's just how I felt. So I told him, I was I'm not washing your dishes. There's a dishwasher in the kitchen. Put the dishes in the dishwasher, which to me is logical, right? But he was like, no, you need to go in there and wash these dishes. And I was I'm not washing the dishes because they're not mine. And the way you raised me was to clean up after myself. And he got pissed when I said this. I was you raised me to clean up after myself and to take care of my messes and to not be accountable for other people's messes and to hold other people accountable for their messes. This is how you raised me. So I wouldn't clean up after my brother and sister. I would tell them, hey, clean up. Do your part, right? And that's the way my dad raised us, to know that we're all a part of a unit, right? To all do our part. So when I reminded him of this, I was hey, you raised me to do my part. I haven't had a single dish in this house in a week. I clean up my dishes as soon as I get done with it. Then he grabs a cast iron skillet. Keep in mind, my dad played professional baseball. He grabs a cast iron skillet and then swings the goddamn skillet at me. So I I hit him with the Floyd Mayweather. I'm hey, whoa, watch out now. So then that's when we got into the argument, and I was dude, I'm out. And he's get out. So it was a mutual thing. So anyways, that's why I ended up getting kicked out the house. So I feel if you can put me out the house over some dishes, you don't really love me. You don't really care about me. So I leave, and then I think it was 22 or 23, 4 or 5 years later, my girl at the time, she was look, she's your dad's gonna die. You might as well reach out. That's literally how she started. She's your dad's gonna die. You might as well forgive him, and you might as well reach out to him and, just be friends with him. And I was, of course I'm hard-headed, my ego, why would I want to be friends with him? Fuck that guy, blah, 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 right? This is what we do, right? This is what we do. We see the world from our perspective, and we're no, blah, 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 right? And that's our ego. So, let me close this for you. Let me come back for you, all right? So here's what happened. I started thinking about it, and I started thinking to myself, you know what? My dad is on disability at this point. If things go the way they're supposed to go, him and my mom are going to die before me, right? Because usually the parents die and then the kids die. That's usually how the circle of life works, right? So I started thinking about it, and I was you know what? We had a lot of good times when I was a kid. There was some stuff in there that was unnecessary, that didn't need to be in there. But I felt I was mature enough to accept that my mother and father did the best that they could with what they had. Although there was a lot of unnecessary experiences, a lot of pain, and a lot of drama that I didn't feel like was deserved to me or my brother or sister. I do feel like my parents did the best they could. So when I reached that conclusion, I was like, you know what? I have to forgive my dad for putting me out the house. I have to forgive him for not speaking to me for 4 or 5 years. I have to forgive him for treating me the way he treated me, because in his perspective, it was love. But the only reason I was able to forgive him is because I put up a boundary with how I was going to be treated versus how he thought he was going to treat me. This is one of the things that I talk about in my writings all the time. You have to create a boundary for how you're going to be treated. And you do that when you have enough self-awareness of what you want and what you deserve, right? So I determined that my father was no longer treating me within that boundary that I set for myself. And that's why in his perspective and my perspective, I had to leave the house. He kicked me out and I easily walked out the house with a garbage bag over my shoulder that had my clothes, my PlayStation, and my very first cell phone, which was I got a cell phone from Sprint. That was my very first cell phone company. So what ended up happening was I reached out to him, I called him, and I said, hey, I just want you to know I'm no longer mad at you. I understand the position you were coming from. You know, at that time period, I have no hostility towards you. I have no anger towards you. I'm actually calling because I think we should try to heal our relationship. I think we should be, I don't think we should have the father-son relationship that, you know, they describe in the books. I think we should just be you and me, and we should just build our relationship based on who we are today. And when he heard that, he was like, okay, cool. He was like, what are you doing this weekend? I'm cooking, come over. So I think I went over that weekend or the next weekend, I can't remember, but I went over there and he was cooking. We made a bunch of food. We just laughed. We had a good time. So with that being said, now I could go further into this story. Here's the deal. 2 years after that, my dad passed away. So I'm grateful. No, my dad is dead. My dad's gone. I'm grateful that we had, you know, not 2 years. It was about 4 years. I'm grateful that we had the 4 years after right? So we had about 4 years where we didn't talk, but then we had about 4 years where, you know, we got it together. And I'm grateful for that, right? I'm grateful for that because I was able to forgive him. And forgiving him, it healed him and it healed me. This is why forgiveness is so important, you know? You pardon yourself, you know? You give yourself the ability to grow from whatever pain you are dealing with. The pain is not that important. It's really not that important. It's your ego that chooses to hold on to the pain. Now, if you weren't here at the beginning, of the live, you may not get what I'm about to say now. But if you were here at the beginning of the live, now you can understand exactly what I'm saying. You forgive yourself because it heals you and lets go of the pain. And then when you let go of the pain, you let in love, right? Because when you let in love, now you operate with that frequency of love. I had to take myself out of my perspective, which is what I was talking about at the beginning of the live, and put myself into my dad's perspective, right? And then once I could see his perspective, I could see that he didn't even realize, like I said, he didn't even realize he was hurting me. He thought he was doing fine. He thought he was doing the best he could, but he wasn't. So at the end of this story, I want you guys to understand that forgiveness is the only thing that matters, because you don't want to carry the anger, the pain, the hostility. When you do that, you can't live in love. You can't live in peace. You gotta pick. Which one do you want? You want to live in harmony, in peace, in love, or do you want to be jaded, bitter, upset, scarred, mad, angry, resentful? Which one? You have to decide. You have to decide which one you want. You can't be both. You have to decide where you want to be. You have to decide.